If I was a good booktuber, I definitely would have looked it up by now. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to tell you about my experiences reading the books that you picked for me in the month of February. I had a lot of great selections for you to choose from for the Pick My Book in February. They were all Book of the Month books, and I was genuinely interested in reading every single one of them. Some of them were actually very popular here on BookTube and critically acclaimed. Alas, your winner, your top selection, was No Exit by Taylor Adams. But very closely behind that, everyone also was interested in hearing about The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. So what did I do? I read both of them. And I'm glad that I did. I started out with No Exit by Taylor Adams. This is the story of a woman who is traveling home from college when she is stuck in a snowstorm and stranded at a highway rest stop. She's there with a few other people, and while outside trying to make a phone call, she happens to see that there is a girl caged in one of the parked vehicles at this rest stop, and she makes it her mission to rectify that circumstance. Basically, she decides right then and there that she is going to be the hero. Now, I hate to get on here and say this. I am very insecure and anxious about doing so, but I was a little bit okay. I was disappointed in this book. No Exit is super hyped on BookTube. Everybody, not everybody, but there are so many people out there that love this book, and so many of my subscribers love this book, and so many of you have wanted me to read it for so long that I hate to say that it disappointed me, but it did. I don't want to go as far as saying that I didn't like the book or that it was awful or that I'm mad that I had to read it. None of that is true. I thought it was okay, but the truth of the matter is it just didn't live up to all of the hype that it's received. I have a couple of pretty specific things about it that I just couldn't get past. One of which was a huge distraction for me. I guess I could blame that on characterization, and I'll tell you why. Okay, so obviously there's a protagonist, the woman, Darby, who realizes that there's a girl being held captive in a vehicle. Then there's the victim, which is the girl. And then there's the antagonist, who is responsible for abducting and holding this girl captive. And I just didn't feel like these three characters, the characters that Taylor Adams built for us, I didn't feel like they necessarily fit into the circumstances of this plot. What I mean by that is there's nothing wrong with these characters, but considering what's happening to them, what they're participating in, and what's at stake, there was just this imbalance that really pulled me out of the story. I was really distracted by this to the point where I didn't enjoy myself. So from my perspective, what I found is that the protagonist of the story seems way too capable of dealing with this kind of circumstance. She's a young college student, and, yet she seems totally prepared to go up against an unknown abductor and potential threat, and she just seemed way too capable of handling this well. I mean, I'm almost 40 years old, and I can tell you that I would have experienced a lot more fear, a lot more emotional and psychological trauma than this young college student did. On the other hand, we have an antagonist that I didn't think was capable enough. I didn't take wasn't scared. The antagonist didn't scare me. I'm trying to be very vague because I don't really want to give away who it is, even though you do learn pretty early on who it is. But that's another issue. We'll talk about that in a second. But I wasn't scared of the antagonist. I doubted very much that they could pull off this huge undertaking. They've kidnapped somebody. The intent, the circumstance that we learn once the book is completed. I mean, they didn't seem at all capable of doing this. They didn't seem at all capable of going up against this protagonist who seemed ultra capable. So it was just really distracting to me. And I found myself obsessing over that a little bit too much. Like, that bothered me to the point that I couldn't even turn it off and just enjoy. And likewise, the victim of this situation, who has been trapped, held captive, abducted from her normal life, made to starve and go thirsty for extended periods of time in this cage, also using the bathroom on herself, and like such a loss of dignity would occur in those circumstances, and so much emotional and psychological trauma. But yet in the book, our victim is kind of like the only one who's okay with everything. You know, she's just kind of like, you know, sometimes you get abducted and that's nothing that the character actually says. But considering the specifics of the character, which I'm not going to go into detail about, it was just very unbelievable that the victim would be so collected and calm and, you know, perfectly fine characters in their own right. Like, I can't say that that the imbalance lied within the character. The imbalance just the imbalance was just with these characters inside of this plot. Also, like I briefly mentioned, I mean, we do learn fairly early who is responsible for this. You know, that just goes to show how little mystery is really involved in this story. There's not a lot. There's not a lot you as the reader can do except sort of sit back and just let the book happen. Normally I don't mind that. This in theory is the kind of book that I would really love reading, except that there wasn't much tethering me to this story. For instance, the book only takes place over like 8 hours, which isn't a very long time to get to know your protagonist, to empathize with your protagonist, or your victim in this case. So, in my opinion, what needs to happen, if I can't become invested in the story because of my attachment to the protagonist, because I want the protagonist to survive and overcome, then I need to be threatened. I need to feel threatened, feel scared of, or feel suspense surrounding the villain themselves, the antagonist. Like, I need to be afraid. If I'm not afraid for my protagonist, I need to be afraid. So the best way to keep me afraid is to keep me in the dark as the reader. I've mentioned before and found that a lot of people tend to agree that things become less scary when everything is out in the open. That fear of the unknown is one of the most successful ways to manipulate your reader or your viewer. Like, the masked killer in a horror movie is way more scary as long as they stay masked. And this book just didn't have the fear or the suspense built into it that I thought that it would. So that was disappointing. Also, similar to my experience with Kill Creek, which was talked about in a recent reads video, so you may have missed it, but my biggest complaint about that book was not really my biggest complaint, but one of my complaints about that book was that the climax of the story went on for a really long time. Likewise, in No Exit, the climax of the story goes on too long. I'm not going to say way too long. I'm not going to say it's ridiculous, but I mean, it just goes on too long. And I think it goes on too long because the rest of the book doesn't match. The rest of the book is kind of calm. The rest of the book is kind of, I'm not going to say things don't happen. There are things that happen, and there are circumstances that are tense, and there are events that get your anxiety up a level or so. But like the climax so far extends so far past what the rest of the story, the tone of the rest of the story, that I needed it to end. So, what did I like about this book? Similar to The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn, which also super hyped, also kind of let me down. Not in a I hate this book sort of way, but in a this isn't as special as I thought it would be sort of way. My favorite thing about that book was A.J. Finn's writing. My favorite thing about this book is Taylor Adams' writing. I might not agree with some of the choices that he made for this book, but I really like his descriptions. I really like the way that he relates to me as a reader, describes things to me in a way that hits home. I remember one description in particular where one character is talking about or thinking about how much his family member watched VHS tapes, and the description or the book reads something like he watched the VHS tape over and over to the point that the tape itself strangled and killed the VCR. Like that kind of thing. That was not a quote. That was not verbatim. But this might be an instance which is rare but not implausible. But this might be an instance where I might like a movie made out of this book better than I like the book. I can't say that for sure. I'm just theorizing here. I'm just talking because I'm unsettled with the fact that I didn't love this book as much as a lot of other people seem to love this book. It's nothing that would prevent me from going to the store and picking up another Taylor Adams book. Like it's not like that. I think this is still a 3-star read. I think it's good. I think that it has a lot of stuff going for it. But me as a reader, I was just distracted to the point that it affected my enjoyment. On the other hand, like I said, I also read The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. I just finished this book today. It's still very fresh in my memory. And again, this isn't going to be a phenomenal book for me. It's not going to go down in history as one of the best, but it was enjoyable. And unlike No Exit, it was completely immersive. This is the kind of book that I started reading. Like every time I started reading this book or jumped back into this book, time passed effortlessly. And I wasn't distracted by anything. I wasn't pulled out of the story. I was just in it. I was just in the story. I should probably tell you what the story is. So this is about a woman named Fiona. Her sister was murdered 20 years ago in 1994. The book takes place in 2014. And she is a journalist who is covering the renovation of a boarding school in her town, which happens to be the place that her sister's body was found. The school at the time was closed. It had been closed since, I believe, the 70s. So it's just because it's the scene of where her sister died, it's a fascination for her, and somebody has bought the property and is renovating it. That's one part of the story, but there's another part of the story, a narrative that follows 4 of the girls in 1950 who were living at this boarding school, and what their friendship was like, what they endured there, and also the narrative serves to tell us about this ghost named Mary Hand that haunts the grounds of Idlewild Hall. This is probably a 3.5 star read, not rated much better than No Exit, even though I did enjoy it better. But here's the thing. I enjoyed this book because of all of the things it didn't do wrong. So there's something about this story that I've heard before. It reminds me of things I've read before. It's not one of my favorite ways to be told a story. This dual timeline, present, past, shift, back and forth, ping pong game. If I enjoyed that more, I probably would have really liked this book. Instead, it stylistically is not my favorite, but it is more successful than a lot of its counterparts at that style. I wasn't distracted by anything. I wasn't frustrated with either timeline, which I think is a big one. In a dual timeline story, like one of those timelines usually ends up frustrating me. I usually get angry that I have to read one timeline or the other. I want to be rooted in past or present. I don't care, like which. There's just so many things that type of story goes, so many ways that type of story goes wrong for me. And the very fact that this one didn't go wrong for me makes me enjoy it, made me enjoy it, helped me enjoy it, even though, like I said, it's a frustrating kind of story for me. I think that it is a rut that the genre happens to be stuck in right now. Genre being mystery thriller. This is primarily mystery, where something like No Exit is primarily thriller. I've just read too much of it. I've just read too much of it. What was refreshing about The Broken Girls is the supernatural element. That kept me intrigued. That kept me really invested in the story because I wanted to see how the author made sense of this supernatural element, because it wasn't accepted. Like, it's like this ghost exists in a story where it's not okay for a ghost to exist. It's a realistic kind of story, a realistic tone. I mean, all of this stuff is very normal. With the supernatural element thrown in there, I was concerned and really interested in seeing where the author took it. Turns out Simone St. James did it well. I can imagine some things that I may have liked to read more, but by the end of the book, it seemed completely normal or completely natural that this book contained something supernatural. I also really liked Fiona, our main character, who lost her sister 20 years ago, hasn't gotten over that tragedy. That's another very tenuous plot line for me, or like plot point for me. Characters who can't get over something in their past, I sometimes get annoyed with them. You know, there's part of me that wants to scream at the character to just get over it. It depends on how the author. Can I put this down? Like, my arm is starting to hurt. What am I doing? Why am I still holding that up? Okay. The author, depending on how they write their character, you can either sympathize with the character or you can turn on the character and just really want the character to get over it. In this case, I really liked Fiona. I liked Fiona's the relationship that Fiona was in. I was rooting for them as a couple, even though, you know, that's not a major plot point in the story. It's just a little side thing. But I liked it. I liked her father. And I liked the four girls, the four friends that we follow and their experiences in 1950. I think, yeah, those are the things that saved it for me. The characters, the supernatural element. And I'm impressed that Simone St. James wrote a book that I probably never should have liked, and yet I liked it. And the only reason I say that, believe me, I have hundreds of books like this on my shelf, you know, with the dual timelines and the present amateur sleuth who's solving a past from the mystery. Like, I could probably go to my shelf and randomly point and find a book like that. I'm not saying that I hate them, I don't read them. I'm just saying, like, I've read so many. There's so many out there that it's kind of getting tedious at this point, and I'm looking for somebody who does something. I'm looking for an author who does something different. And at least Simone St. James wrote this very normalized and standardized story in a way that stayed interesting for me, and didn't commit any of those sins that these stories can sometimes commit. So in that regard, I liked it. And this book has served to make me even more excited for the Simone St. James novel that just came out. If I was a good booktuber, I definitely would have looked it up by now. Something at the Sundown Motel. No, it's just called the Sundown Motel. But The Broken Girls definitely has made me even more excited to read that. Book of the Month books, for some reason, kind of I'm a little bit more lenient on when it comes to keeping or unhauling, just because, I don't know, they're Book of the Month books. I don't know why that matters. But I'm going to keep both of these because this sounds weird, but I'm so fascinated that I liked this. I'm so happy that I liked this that I just want to keep it, even though I didn't like it to the point that it surpasses a bunch of other titles for me. I still liked it. So I'm going to keep it. As far as No Exit is concerned, I refuse to accept that I had such a varying opinion than so many of you out there that I'm probably going to have to go back to it. I'm probably going to have to read it again and maybe see if I missed something, if there's I don't know. It's not going to be soon. I'm not saying I'm rereading it tomorrow or anything. I'm just saying I don't really want to part with it because part of me hasn't accepted that I didn't like it a lot. Those are the two books I read for February's Pick My Book. This is not going to happen every month. Do not get excited. It just happened this month because I didn't have any huge reading project going on. My Pick My Book video for March is up now on my channel, and you still have time to weigh in on which book or books I read in March. So make sure to head on over to that video and make your selection before it is too late. Let me know how much I've totally disappointed you with this video and my opinions about these books. I would love to discuss either one of them down in the comments if you're interested in trying to convince me about No Exit or pick my brain some more about The Broken Girls. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask those as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very soon.